Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're taking a look at something I am sure you use every single day, probably even right now, email.
That's right.
And I know what you might be thinking, email. How interesting can that really be?
Right.
But trust me, there's a whole lot more to it than meets the eye. We're going to uncover some really surprising things about the history of email.
Yeah.
We're going to demystify how it all works, all those inner workings, and explore how it shaped really the modern world in ways you might not expect.
Definitely.
So get ready to hit send on this journey.
Absolutely. And it really is amazing how something we totally take for granted has such a rich history, a really unexpected backstory. Like, did you know that email was actually around before we even had the internet as we know it?
Yeah, I remember reading that. It's kind of mind-blowing. Like back when computers took up entire rooms, right?
You're exactly right. Back in the 1960s, these massive shared computer systems, they're called time-sharing systems, and they were like what everybody was using, and users needed some way to communicate with each other on these systems. So one of our very earliest examples was at MIT. Their system was called CTSS, and it actually let users leave messages for each other on the system.
So that was like the original reply all, just on a much larger scale.
Yeah, in a way, that's a great way to think about it. And it's really pretty cool to think about how these early systems sort of pointed the way towards email as we know it. Like they had that need for what we call asynchronous communication. You don't have to be there at the same time to talk to each other.
Right.
And that's like one of the big things about email.
It makes you wonder if those, early computer scientists, if they had any idea they were changing the world.
Right.
But how did we get from, like, messages on a single system to sending them across networks? Like, when did email actually break free of the computer lab?
Well, that is a great question, and that's what really changed everything. That all started back in 1971 with this thing called ARPANET, which was kind of like the early form of the internet. And this is where we see those first real emails being sent. And this is also where our friend the Art Temple makes its first appearance.
Wow, 1971. I had no idea the Art Temple has been around that long.
Oh, yeah. It's a true veteran of the digital world. And it did something really important back then.
Yeah.
It showed you where a user was located within the network. So, an address might have been user at computer. Pretty simple. But it worked.
I'm starting to think that hectenta symbol deserves a little bit more respect.
I think so.
That's fascinating. So now I'm wondering, like, how did those early messages actually travel? I mean, was it really as easy as clicking send and poof, it just magically appeared?
Well, not quite magic, but it is a pretty amazing journey.
Okay.
You've heard of the information superhighway, right?
Right.
Well, that's what your email's riding on. Makes a few stops along the way, though.
Okay, so walk me through it then. What's actually happening behind the scenes when I hit that send button?
Okay, think of it like sending a postcard. You write your message, you got to address it, put a stamp on it, take to the mailbox, right?
Right.
Email's kind of like that, but instead of all those physical steps, it's digital.
Okay.
That's all.
So the to from subject lines, those are like the address on the digital postcard.
Exactly. And just like, a postcard goes from your mailbox to a sorting facility and then onto its destination, your email, it goes through a whole chain of digital handlers too.
Okay.
So your email client, the program you use to actually send the email, that passes the message to what we call a mail submission agent, or MSA.
An MSA, is that like all those cryptic acronyms I see in my email headers sometimes, like SMTP or POP3?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Those acronyms, those are all the different protocols, or we can think about them as like the languages that computers use to talk to each other during this whole process.
Okay.
SMTP, for example, that's like the delivery truck of the email world.
Okay.
It takes your message from the MSA to the recipient's mail server.
It's really wild to think about all that's happening and, like, in the blink of an eye, often like across continents and everything.
But wait, hold on. You mentioned mail servers. What exactly is a mail server?
So a mail server, that's like the post office for emails, right? Big, powerful computer. Its whole job is receiving, storing, and then distributing all those email messages. Every email address is linked to a specific mail server. So once your email gets to that mail server, it just kind of waits there in the inbox until the recipient's ready to, open it.
So that's why sometimes, it seems like an email takes forever to get somewhere. It really is stuck in some digital line at the post office.
That's a good way to think about it. And all those other acronyms you see, like POP3, IMA, those are telling your email client how to get those messages from the server and put them in your inbox. Wow, I had no idea. There was so much going on behind the scenes. It really is like a whole secret language that they're speaking. You know what I find so fascinating about all this, though?
Yeah.
It's just amazing how email went from this like niche thing that only computer scientists use to something that everyone uses.
Yeah.
Like we need it for almost everything.
It's true.
It's completely changed how we work.
Absolutely. Email totally changed the game,
Okay.
especially for businesses and organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if we didn't have email, like we would still be using fax machines and phone calls and like having all these meetings just to get anything done.
And the postage snail mail would be the only way to send things.
Exactly. But email, it's like instant, well, almost instant.
Yeah.
You know, you can work with anybody, anywhere, and it doesn't matter if you're in different places.
Yeah, and you don't have to be available at the same exact time either, right?
That's huge. That's that asynchronous communication we were talking about.
Yeah.
Means you can actually manage your own time. Get things done when you work best. You don't have to like be on the phone waiting for someone to pick up.
Exactly. I don't have to be tied to my desk waiting for a phone call.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's not all perfect, right?
Well, right. There's,
Like every tool.
there's always another side.
There's downsides.
Like we've all felt that feeling of being like chained to our inbox,
Oh, yeah.
drowning in messages,
Totally.
and feeling like we have to answer them all right away, even when we're not working.
Oh, yeah, that expectation that you have to always be available.
Right. It's like a blessing and a curse.
Right, exactly. It's convenient, but also super stressful. And then there's spam.
Oh, yeah.
It never ends.
The digital junk mail
Ugh, the worst.
that keeps coming and coming.
It really makes you wonder, though, like now that we have all these other ways to communicate, we've got texting and video calls and social media, all this stuff.
Right.
Is email even like relevant anymore? Are young people even using it?
It's a good question. And, our sources actually talk about this, like this generational shift that's going on.
Oh, interesting.
It seems like younger people who, grew up with smartphones, they see email as kind of like formal,
Oh, wow.
maybe even old-fashioned.
So email went from being revolutionary to like the old boring parent.
Yeah, kind of, but, that doesn't mean it's going away.
Right.
It's still the way to go for like official stuff, especially at work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And people are working on making it even more useful,
Yeah.
like being able to handle different languages,
Oh, cool.
make it more secure.
So email is kind of evolving like everything else.
Exactly, constantly evolving.
It's wild to think that something that started with like a couple of computer scientists sending messages to each other
Right.
has completely changed. Like how we work, how we talk to each other, even how we think about information.
It's really incredible.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, like, what's next?
What is next for email?
Right. What's email going to look like in the future?
A world without spam.
Ooh, that would be amazing.
Messages that disappear.
Now, those are some innovations. That's the future I want to live in.
Right.
And on that note, I want to leave you with this. Like, think about it. If you could design the email of the future, what would it be? What would it solve? Thanks for diving deep with us today, everyone.